3B, number lines. Okay, so now we're going to talk about number lines. Basically, now that we've got into negative and positive numbers, we've got into integers, we've got into real numbers, it'd be good if we could show them visually in some way. Now, it's easy to show positive numbers visually. If I say 6, then you draw a picture of 6 of something. And that's simple enough. So 6 could be represented, just to make it simple, as x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's easy enough to show. But if you're dealing with negative, like -5, well, how do you show that? The 5's easy, but how do you show the negative part of it with those pictures? So that could be a little bit of a concern. Whereas a number line allows us to show this, I'm going to say, graphically. Right? So if I create a number line, the number line has arrows on both ends because it goes to negative infinity, so it goes on forever to the left. It goes to positive infinity, it goes on forever to the right. And a number line can start and end wherever you want, meaning your display of it can start anywhere. It could show just negative numbers. It could show all positive numbers. It could show some negative, some positive. It could show from -2 to +2, or it could show from -2 million to +2 million. So it's really up to you depending on what you're trying to do. So I'm going to just draw a simple one. And I tend to use hashtags, these little dashes going across the line. You don't have to, but many times we find it easier that way. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, so I've now numbered my number line. I chose to keep it simple and keep it down to smaller numbers, and that's fine. Now, with the numbering, I chose to number all of them. And let's say we look at -5, like we had before. -5, well, we look for -5, and there it is, there's -5. What if I want that +6? Oh, there we go, there's +6. Okay, so easy enough to find the numbers on the number line. Now, sometimes you may choose to not number every hash mark. You may decide, hey, I don't want to write all those down. Maybe I'm going to do it every 2. Whatever you do for numbering, keep it consistent. So if you're counting by 1, you're counting by 1. If you're counting by 2, count by 2. If you're counting by 3, count by 3. Don't bounce around and show 1, 3, 4, 9. Okay? So keep it consistent. Those are called indices. Okay? And we want to keep those consistent. So let's say I want to just number by 2's. Then I can do that, and that's perfectly valid, and it's obvious. If that's 2, that must be 1. If that's 4 and that's 2, that must be 3. So it's easy to follow along, even if you have breaks in it. We could even go so far, this might be overkill on a graph like this, as to number that 5 and this -5, and then it's obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, so really straightforward with that. Now, let me draw, I'm going to put numbers back on. I'm going to get rid of these that I just drew, because most people don't really have problems with putting integers on a number line. That usually works out pretty well. Where they tend to run into problems is with decimals. Okay, so if I want to say 2.6 on this number line, well, it's a positive number, so I'm going to be on the positive side. Notice there's a positive side and a negative side. You know, it's going around 0 here. 2.6, well 2.6 is going to be between 2 and 3, right? It's bigger than 2, it's less than 3, so it's going to be there, and it's a 0.6 is over halfway, so I can put that a little over halfway here and have my 2.6. That's not so much a concern. People usually do pretty well with that. It's the negative side that gets people. Negative 4.1. So I have negative 4.1. So people come over here, and here's where the mistake tends to happen. If you're counting on the negative side of a number line, you're counting from 0. So you're working your way to the left, which means when you get to one of the numbers there, anything larger than that's going to keep going to the left. So I get to negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Negative 4.1 keeps going this way, right? I go out to 4, 4.1 is going to be between negative 4.1 and negative 5. So it's over here, negative 4.1. So remember, you're starting at 0 and working your way out. So a larger negative number, one with a greater magnitude, is going to be further to the left than a smaller one. Negative 2 is here, negative 4 is here. 4 is bigger than 2, so you're going to be more to the left. Negative 4.1 is bigger than, or I should say 4.1 is bigger than 4, so it's going to be more to the left. The common mistake that people make is they go, oh, negative 4.1, and they go negative 4, and then they put it slightly to the right because they're adding on that 0.1. So don't make that mistake. Don't fall into that trap. So if you've got negative 1.8, you're going to come out to negative, you're going to go from 0 to negative 1, and you're going to keep going to 0.8, so negative 1.8. Another thing that we run into with number lines is sometimes we have segmented sections. So I was doing it a number per, and you could have something where you're covering much more than that. I could do a number line, and I could have each one of these worth 6, 6, 12, 18, 24, negative 6, negative 12, negative 18, negative 24. So, I mean, I can choose my numbering scheme on it. But what we sometimes run into is something like this, where I have 0, but then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to call that one 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to call that negative 1. So what we've done is we've split this up into pieces. So if that's 1, halfway to 1 is 0.5. Halfway to 0.5 is 0.25. So I could say, I'm going to put these in blue, that that's 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, and then that's 1. And we wouldn't number those there, we just have the 1 and the 0, and these hash marks would help us to understand that this is 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, and 1. The reason this gets fun to play with is that now if I have 0.67, I'm going to come in here, that's 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, so it's somewhere in here, so we have 0.67. Or if we have negative 0.19, we know that's negative 0.25, negative 0.5, well 0.19 is going to be not as far out as that, so we have negative 0.19. So just the difference that happens with that. Realize that these hash marks could be pieces of a number too, but they are always consistent. This is counting by 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, 0.25. 4 quarters is $1, right? So 1 quarter is 25 cents, 2 quarters is 50 cents, 3 quarters is 75 cents, 4 quarters is $1. So it's always consistent, but it could be numbered where these are large differences or small differences. And if you've ever seen a ruler, which I know you have, then you actually see that all the time. If you look at a ruler and you're doing measurements, the ruler has, let's say that that's 0 inches and that's 1 inch. Then it's got a mark here that's actually a 1/2 inch. And then it's got a mark here and here that's a 1/4 inch and 3/4 of an inch. And then it's got a mark here, 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 and here, where that's 1/8 of an inch, and 3/8 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch, and 7/8 of an inch. And I know we haven't got into fractions yet. And then if you go even further, they got all the marks in between those, and you're talking about a 1/16 of an inch, 3/16, 5/16, 7/16, 9/16, 11/16, 13/16, and 15/16. And that's the way that a ruler works. Well, it's the same idea. In between each of these, there are other divisions or separations. Well, that's a number line, and number lines work in one dimension or with one variable, right? You're just plugging in for one direction. It's going to be positive, negative, but along that. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about interpreting bar graphs and recognizing what they say. So now what I'd like to do is actually take advantage of this number line stuff and create a bar graph. So let's say I asked a bunch of people what their favorite color was. So I'm going to put color here, and number of people. So the number of people who said that was their favorite color. And I'm just going to look at red, blue, green, orange, and other. And so I asked them, and out of the people that I asked, 7 said red, 2 said blue, 3 said green, 8 said orange, and 5 said other. They came up with some other color. Maybe they liked purple or black or whatever it happens to be. So I did these. Now I want to create a bar graph. So in creating a bar graph, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to treat this vertical axis, this line that's going up, as if it was a number line. So I want that number line to be able to handle these numbers from 2 through 8. So I'm going to number my number line. So I'm going to 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and I'm going to call that number of people. And then on this axis, the horizontal axis, we're going to put these colors. So we have red, blue, green, orange, and other. So there you go. So red, blue, green, orange, and other. So now I'm going to create a bar graph. Remember when we were looking at all those bar graphs, they don't touch each other. They're separated, right? We've got these different categories. And so all we're going to do is we're going to match up the number of people with their color. So red had 7. So we're just going to create a bar over red that goes up to 7. Blue had had 2. So we're going to do a bar over blue that goes up to 2. Green had 3. A bar that goes up to 3. Orange had 8. So a bar that goes up to 8. And other had 5. A bar that goes up to 5. And we just created our first bar graph. And that's it. Not really much to it otherwise. You've got your categories down here, and then you've got your number line up here, and we go as far as it goes. Now, we used values that were whole numbers because we were counting the number of people, but realized that a bar graph could also represent decimal numbers, and that's okay. We would do the exact same thing. And we would just go up to the thing. If it was instead of 7, we had 7.3, we would have gone just a little bit higher. So having decimal numbers really doesn't change anything with creating a bar graph. Now, what does change it is having negative numbers. And this may look a little odd to some of you. It is much more common to see a bar graph that's showing us positive numbers, but there are times when bar graphs show negative numbers. Maybe they're showing the change in interest rates over a period of time. So they're showing each month how much the interest rate changed. So sometimes that change is going to be positive, the interest rate's going to go up. And sometimes that change is going to be negative, so the interest rate's going to go down. In that case, you end up with something like this. So I'm going to kind of pull together decimals and dealing with negatives. So we're going to, we're going with interest, well, we're going to go with months. So the month and the interest rate. As a percent. So we got January, February, March, April, May, June. I could go further, but I'm not going to because I just don't want to put in that much effort. So we're looking at the percent that it changed that month. So let's say in January that the interest rate went down by 0.1%. In February, the interest rate went up by 0.2%. In March, it went up by 1%. In April, it went up by 3%. In May, it went down by 0.5%. And in June, it went up by 0.2%. So now I've got my months, my categories, and I have these interest rate change, I should say change in interest rate, right? And some are positive and some are negative. So how would we graph that on a bar graph? Well, we have some up and some down, some negative, some positive. So we're actually going to start in the middle there, and it's going to, the largest positive was 0.3, the largest negative was negative 0.5. So I'm just going to 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, negative 0.2, negative 0.4, negative 0.6. So that's change in interest rate as a percent. So I just labeled that. And then we're going to have January, February, March. So I'm going to have to put those down here. January, February, March, April, May, June. So I've got all those there, and now I'm just going to graph it like I did before, but positive numbers are going to go up. Negative numbers are going to go down. So in January we had negative 0.1. So it goes down by 0.1. In February, we had positive 0.2, so up by 0.2. In March, positive 0.1, so it's going to go up by that 0.1. In April, it goes up by 0.3, so positive 3.3. In May, it goes down by 0.5, so it's going to go down by 0.5. And then in June, it went down by 0.2. I think I had said I wanted that to go up, so I put the wrong sign there. So up by 0.2. So it goes back up by 0.2. And that is a bar graph depicting positive and negative values. So see that it's balanced around this horizontal line, and the positive values go up, the negative values go down. So that's dealing with number lines and actually creating our own